Hey everybody, it's Eric Linas, your fabulous local real estate agent, giving you some weekly information on different things. So, you want to buy a foreclosure. That's what I'm calling that one this week. We get calls all the time from people who see a property that's for sale and it's like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath bi-level in Crown Point. It's only $110,000 and everybody wants to buy it immediately. So, let's talk about foreclosures and how they actually work in reality in this market. What we see a lot, I'm sure we've all seen this, is late night television. There's always some guy randomly always next to a swimming pool with some kind of umbrella drink telling you how you can make $1 million buying these foreclosed and tax sale properties for pennies on the dollar, and then either living in them and building up equity or selling them and flipping them to other people and all these things. So one of the reasons why those, advertisements take place at 3 o'clock in the morning on channel 56 is because the product they are selling doesn't necessarily work. There are certainly people who do that and make money at it. It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to find the properties, finance properties, this whole thing. So buying a foreclosure to live in or even just one to maybe flip is a completely different process. In this video, I want to talk about people who just want to buy a home for cheap, not necessarily want to flip it or rent it out or something like that. So what happens is that we'll get phone calls from people, first-time buyers a lot of times that are, like I said, found this fantastic deal on realtor.com, or they saw something in the newspaper sometimes. There's all these different things. It doesn't usually work out the way they think it is. So we'll do the basics of what a foreclosure is. Somebody owns a house. They have a mortgage. For whatever reason, they can't pay the mortgage anymore. They've lost a job, they've moved away, they're jerks, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So the bank has to file a lawsuit, give the owners time to answer and defend it if they can, and do kinds of different things, and then eventually get an order of foreclosure. Judgment of foreclosure is actually what it's called, and then apply that judgment. There's a couple different steps, and then get to a sheriff's sale. So at that point, the house goes into sheriff's sale. Usually what happens is that the bank that holds the mortgage makes the bid for the property, which is usually the amount that they're owed, and then they take it and put it into a pool with other properties, and then it takes off from there. So first thing is, a lot of times we'll get calls from people that'll say, hey, I heard this house is in foreclosure, how can I buy it? And if it's not listed yet, what I tell people is, we'll keep an eye on it, but usually the foreclosure process takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on what's happening with the lawsuit part of it. So first of all, if you see something is going to go up for foreclosure, keep an eye on it, get in touch with an agent, but expect that it's going to take a long time before you can actually purchase it for any reason. So the bank takes it, and they get an appraisal on it. And then they, based on what the appraisal says, they list it for X amount of money. So the trick is, and the reason why these, I take people out to foreclosed homes and they're often very disappointed, even though I kind of prepare them for it, is because if the house is appraised low, that means there's something wrong with it. Just because a house is a foreclosure does not mean it's going to be cheap. The bank has an appraiser going. If it's somebody that, took really good care of the house, it's in a fantastic area, it's going to go pretty much for the market price. Just because it's a foreclosure doesn't mean it's going to be cheap. So a lot of times we'll walk into these houses that are $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 underpriced based on the market, and we walk in and it's falling down or it's disgusting or something like that. So the thing to keep in mind with foreclosures is that if you have a property that's super cheap, there is a reason for it to be super cheap. Sometimes the foreclosures could be a little bit cheaper because, the house has been closed up for a long time. So it kind of smells musty. They don't really clean them. So it might be, maybe the prior owners left some garbage on the floor or something like that. Either way, that will be accounted for in the price. So if a house is in foreclosure and it's priced very cheaply, it's because there is something wrong. And this can go anywhere from, crappy remodeling, giant basement cracks. I've seen ones with like gaping, obvious holes in the roof. So when you're walking into foreclosure, just make sure you're aware. If it's super cheap, that means there's something super wrong with it. The bank will price it according to the market with no real discount just because it's a foreclosure. The other bad part about these foreclosures is that a lot of times because they're cheaper, they're appealing to buyers that, don't have a lot of money in the bank. They don't have 20% down. They can't necessarily buy into, prestigious neighborhood in Valparaiso or something like that. So we're just looking at basic, 2-3 bedroom houses in just regular basic areas. Most of those buyers, because they don't have big down payment money usually, means they're going for an FHA, USDA, or a VA loan. Not VA so much, that's different requirements, but the checklist is the same. And when I say checklist, I've talked about this before in prior videos. FHA, USDA, and VA are government-backed loans, and they have a checklist of conditions that a house has to meet in order to qualify for those loan programs. So what happens is we have FHA buyers, which there's a ton of FHA buyers, that's no big deal, looking at foreclosures that in no way will ever qualify for FHA loans. Everything from, the ticky-tacky stuff like there's peeling paint, or, the hot water heater doesn't have the, scald extension pipe, or little things that can normally be dealt with when you have an owner-occupied home. Here's the deal. Banks, foreclosure companies, do not make repairs. They will sometimes go in prior to it being listed, and, if there's water shooting out of a pipe or there's some obvious hole in the roof, it's big things, they'll go in and fix those, but they don't make any other kind of repairs. So what'll happen is we'll walk into these foreclosed homes. It's decent, decent enough price or whatever, but there's 1 or 2 things wrong that will not pass FHA. So even if my buyers aren't looking for a deep discount on a house in bad shape, if they're an FHA, USDA buyer, they're not going to be able to purchase that home because there's some peeling paint on the garage service door that, sellers aren't going to fix. Banks will not let buyers make any repairs to the property to qualify for a loan, so it's disqualified for an FHA loan. So sometimes what will happen is I'll have clients, I'll set up a search for them, they're looking in this area in this price range and they have an FHA loan, and they'll call or they'll text me and say, hey, what about this house on 123 Main Street? And I have to explain to them, it's a foreclosure, it looks decent, but it won't go FHA. Sometimes I'll take them out to look at it anyway, because it's borderline, maybe we can work something out. Most of the time, 98% of the time, they will not go FHA. You know what I mean? It's just, sometimes they're trash homes, but even just being vacant for that long, they can't guarantee that the pipes haven't been frozen or just inside there, there's, like I said, peeling paint or something like that. They're not going to fix it. So a lot of times those foreclosed homes, even if you're not looking for the big discount, are disqualified from these government loan programs because they won't make repairs. The biggest thing about foreclosures that happens all the time, people walk into them for a showing and they're disappointed because they're crap. The reason why they cost $120,000 in a $200,000 area is because there's something wrong. You can sometimes make that work with conventional financing. There are absolutely what they call rehab loans out there where you can buy a house that won't necessarily meet FHA, but then you can get this rehab loan and fix it up and then it'll pass FHA and everything works great. I just closed one of these as a matter of fact. However, this is the other trick that a lot of people don't know about. If, let's say, the house is $100,000 and it has a $20,000 problem, say the basement's leaking or something like that. So you go to the bank and you get this rehab loan, but you are not borrowing $100,000. You are not borrowing the cost of the home. You are borrowing $120,000 because you're borrowing not just the cost of the home, but also the $20,000. So if you're trying to work something into a payment range that works for you and you're looking at a rehab loan, just remember that, you also have to borrow and make payments on the amount that the house is going to be, presumably worth now plus the repairs. So that's another trick that sometimes happen. People think, I'll get my buddy in and we'll fix the, basement and that'll be fine. You can't. These loan programs require you to use certain approved contractors and things like that. So, it's not particularly complicated, but if it's something you don't have experience with, then you're going to want a good agent and a good lender. Hopefully your agent can recommend a good lender as well to work with step by step to make sure you know all of the steps before, moving forward with a rehab loan on a foreclosure. Other than that pricing issue, people think you can buy in cheap of a house and it's not worth it. Foreclosures sometimes take a little extra time. banks aren't really good about, getting paperwork back. And sometimes, the agents that handle them have 25 under contract at the same time. And so, they always have to go through a servicing company, and the servicing company has to talk to the bank and then back to the agent. So sometimes things can be a little more frustrating and take a little bit more time. It's just part of the process. Usually you can get them closed within the initial time frame, but make sure that your agent is following up on that file almost every day, because you need to know what's going on. Occasionally what will happen sometimes is there's a title issue. So title to the property is basically a report that says the person who owns it really owns it, they can legally transfer it to you, and there's no liens on it. So sometimes what happens, usually banks are pretty good by the time they get to the actual foreclosure listing to make sure that title work's cleaned up. Sometimes stuff comes up. The prior owner also couldn't pay a medical bill in addition to their mortgage, so now there's a judgment lien against the house for this medical bill. Make sure it's in your contract with your agent if you're buying a foreclosure that title problems are the responsibility of the seller to fix at their expense, and that you have a clear way to back out if the title work shows something fishy and the seller can't fix it or won't or something like that. Definitely look into foreclosures. There are a lot of good foreclosed homes. We've all heard the horror stories about people stealing the toilet and putting their fist through the wall because they're all mad because of the bank and blah, 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 blah. I haven't seen that as much as I have seen foreclosures that are in really, really bad shape because they've been vacant for so long. Again, that court process can take a couple years sometimes. So, you get burst pipes, you get, animals in the house, you get, all kinds of things. So make sure that, when you look at these foreclosures, that you're being reasonable about the price, that you understand that they're priced for the market. Be sure that you get a home inspection. Even though the seller won't make any fixes, you need to know if there's something hidden, something wrong with the property before you go to closing, because pretty much anything, once closing's done, it's pretty much your problem. Obviously there's, some details there, but get the home inspection. Even if you can't use that inspection to get the seller to fix something, you need to know what's going on. So across the board, unless I'm working with an investor that's going to rip all the walls out anyway, get a home inspection. I always advise it with foreclosure on any house, but particularly with foreclosure, because nobody's lived in the house. We don't have any sales disclosures, nothing. That being said, our foreclosure market has slowed down considerably than where it was 3-4 years ago, but there are still, unfortunately, foreclosures out there, which is unfortunate because that means somebody lost their house. If you see one, contact your agent. You can contact me. I'd be happy to help. See what they can find out just in terms of the listing. Sometimes you can get information. There's certain HUD Home Store, a couple different websites where they have their own kind of property disclosures. Let your agents know to see as much information as you can about that property before you take the time to go to the showing. Because like I said, a lot of times you're walking into these houses, the pictures look fantastic, but you walk in and it sounds like there was an oil spill in a litter box and it's a horrible nightmare. So just try to work with your agent to see what you can find out the most ahead of time. If it still looks like a good deal, if you have financing that can do it, absolutely go take a look, absolutely buy it. I've had plenty of clients buy foreclosures, be totally happy, no problems at all, but it's important to know what you're getting into before you head out there. So if you see something, if you have questions about foreclosures, if you're worried you might go into foreclosure, also give me a call on that. There's certain solutions we can do within the real estate market to, save your credit and help you out with that. If you have any questions about anything, let me know. Put a comment down below. I'll answer it on my next video. Call me, 219-765-2062. You can text me at that same number. Homesalesbyerica.com, Facebook.com/homesalesbyerica. Stop here at the office. Passenger or carrier pigeon, whatever you want. It's totally fine. I'm available for you guys. So have a good week, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.